I have a feeling that we have year after year, especially this year, less unknown, we were formed yesterday type of companies, new projects, new companies. I have a feeling of CNCF entering more into the consolidation phase, right?
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 208, KubeCon EU 2023 Review. Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darren and Victor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darren reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Victor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. Conference season is well in swing now and semi-live, because I think everybody's more like semi-dead at this point after KubeCon EU. We've got Victor, we've got Whitney Lee from VMware, and we've got Engin Diri from Pulumi.
Hey.
Hello, hello.
Victor, you have to be here anyway. So
Hello, I am.
We typically, when we do these KubeCon reviews, Victor says, well, I didn't go to the keynote, I didn't go to any sessions, I wasn't on the show floor, I was just hanging out in the hallway. So in an attempt to try to stave off a very boring episode, we had some other guests come on. Let's start with Engin for the moment. Engin, what was your first impression of KubeCon this year in Amsterdam?
It was very nice. It was really, from the organization side, it was really, really good. So it was much better than the one I experienced before. So food-wise, everything was okay. The hallways, the places were really well designed. So you could go and take a time off, or you could just go to the sessions. So from this side, it was very, very good. And the talks were also very interesting. So I had noted down some highlights, some sessions I went into. So from this side, I was also very surprised to see also the maturity of some of the topics, like Argo, for example. That was very interesting also to see.
Whitney, what about you?
I was listening to Engin and thinking, I think it's a mistake to bring me here because I'm very Victor-esque in the way I do conferences too. Except I do booth duty in the project pavilion, and that is just a blast. But the way I see it is the conference sessions are something that I can replay, but the hallway track and seeing people and connecting with friends, those deep connections, those need to be made in real life. And so that's what I prioritize when I'm at a conference. As far as the ambiance, though, I will say that because the expo floor had natural light, it made it very enjoyable to just be there all day. When in KubeCons in the past, when it felt more cavernous, I was anxious to I got pretty tweaked by the end of it.
Victor, what do you think?
It was the best organized KubeCon so far, I think. My only complaint is something that is outside of their control. It's freaking cold over here.
Do you mean it's like only 25? Is that the problem?
Not short sleeves, yes.
Oh.
Exactly. But one thing that I noticed that, I don't know whether I'm imagining or no, but I have a feeling that we have year after year, especially this year, less unknown, we were formed yesterday type of companies, new projects, new companies. I have a feeling of CNCF entering more into the consolidation phase, right? Okay, so we have those zillions of companies. Let's see what we can do with the existing projects rather than new ones churning out. Not that there were no new ones, but...
Well, does that go along with Kubernetes being boring now?
It is boring. Whatever is on top of it is now interesting.
Okay, so let's assume for a moment, Engin, because you said you did go to a session. What was one of the sessions that jumped out at you?
We have always this delay. So everybody is at Twitter currently with the AI stuff, but we saw that all the talks and all the sessions were slightly delayed. So we're talking maybe about some hypes, which we already passed when we look at Twitter, for example. So one of my absolute highlights, and I think this will be much getting bigger, was WASM. One thing I really found interesting was, for example, Cosmonic. I did not have Cosmonic on my radar. I knew they did something on the WASM Cloud open source project, but they launched 3 or 4 days ago. They launched their professional offering, their PaaS solution for WASM. And that was very interesting to see. They also started to adapt from the start the application model. And yeah, it's an open beta, so everybody can join this and play around. And I found this, for example, very interesting. So the whole WASM movement, I think, will grow much more. And some offerings around this will make it more accessible. So the promise of write it in every language and run it, this kind as we knew from Java, for example, will become more true because platforms like Cosmonic are now able that you write your WebAssembly in Go and the other one in Rust, and then you have the orchestration on it and can see how they communicate and how they behave with each other. So that was my absolute highlight of KubeCon and of the first co-location days.
So I'm curious, do you think that we will have a completely new ecosystem for orchestrating WASM, or that will plug into eventually into existing ecosystem, Kubernetes, Docker, what's not?
That's interesting. You mentioned this. I went to the Fermyon booth and I talked with the people there. I said, hey, I tried the implementation from Azure, having this shim to execute on Kubernetes WASM workload. And he said also, yes, they are working also hard to get this the benefits up and running. So currently you have one container running in your node, in your WASM node, and it's not this scaling or this behavior like you would have on a dedicated WASM cloud or the Spin cloud, for example. So they also admitted it will be interesting to see, as you said, how to include now the WASM movement more into the Kubernetes world. And I'm also curious to see how this will go.
Whitney, was there anything that you did actually go to, since you're being Victor Jr. on this?
Oh, I went to the keynotes on day one. It's exciting to feel the electricity in the room and before everyone is exhausted. It's funny, the keynotes, how they dwindle as it goes. But what did I learn from those keynotes? I enjoy hearing the project updates and seeing the community leaders from each project give those updates. That's probably the big highlight for me.
Was there anything that really stood out from any of those highlights?
That was so long ago. That was a lifetime ago.
It was 3 days ago. Yes. All right. Well, let's go a different direction. Actually, before everything kicked off, you and Victor did Cloud Rejects, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. That's my favorite part of KubeCon, Rejects.
Which has nothing to do with KubeCon, right?
It's always organized the day 2 days before the day zero events of KubeCon, right? So there is a relation that it's happening in the same place, in the same week as KubeCon, right? But it's not organized by CNCF, even though the same folks tend to be in both places, right? The idea was to give a chance to talks who were rejected in KubeCon, because there are so many talks submitted to KubeCon and such a small percentage is actually selected that it's not that all those who were not selected are bad talks. It's more like, hey, you were unlucky. How about we have a session with you?
What do you think that reject percentage is from CNCF?
You mean how many were rejected from CNCF in total or in rejects?
I've heard that about 8% of talks get accepted to KubeCon that are submitted to KubeCon. And then when they opened rejects, they said they got 150 submissions for rejects, and maybe we're only able to do 30 talks from that. So there's a good handful of people, 120 people who got rejected from also rejects. And
that should be a t-shirt. I was rejected from rejects.
A badge of honor.
So what you're saying is, round numbers, not official, you have an 8 in 100 chance of getting into CNCF. And you've got a 1 in 5 chance, roughly, to get to rejects.
Something like that.
Yeah. Best we can tell.
Wow. No, that's not abnormal, I guess. How was the show floor? Engin, we'll start with you.
It was, as Whitney also said, it was very nice. So it was very open. It was one floor, not some kind. I mean, one, and there was another one on the right side for the CNCF projects and some smaller booths. But the main floor was very nice, open, and you had a constant stream of people going up and down. So there were main roads, something, and you could meet a lot of people. So I found it very, very nice.
I found it too, like there was a lot of energy on the floor. Every time I was on the floor, it was very crowded. There were lots of activity at all the booths. I didn't see, maybe it just depends on when I was in there, but I didn't ever see it at a dead place. It felt exciting.
Yeah, that was very different from Detroit. Detroit was
Agreed.
crickets
Uh-huh.
on the expo booth or anything outside of the talks themselves. This time, I think that, yeah, there was definitely much more activity in the expo area.
Something funny that happened in the project pavilion, they put some projects that, the frenemy projects were kind of facing each other. So Flux and Argo CD were sharing the same little kiosk. They were right on top of each other. And there's another one too. What was it?
What was, I remember that it was, now my brain blocked.
Yeah.
But Flux and Argo CD were interesting.
We're wondering whether the organizers were being troublesome on purpose.
Or if they're just trying to be a parent, it's like, look, kids, you have to get along. We're all part of the same family.
I'm not sure whether that helped achieve that goal or whether it worked against it, honestly.
One interesting thing is I found this time there were more play activities. So there was a Lego place where you could go and build Lego. And there were some games. That was really interesting. There was even a oversized Pac-Man game you could play where you can enter and play the ghost, for example. You could go underneath it. So that was very interesting. So
there was a ball pit that was in a camper. That looked fun.
And massage.
And massage. Oh, yeah. Massage. Did you get a massage, Victor?
No, didn't. Couldn't get a free slot.
So what I'm hearing is ball pits. I'm hearing Legos. I'm hearing close quarters. So I'm guessing the pandemic was over in Amsterdam.
Yeah, I've seen maybe like, I would say maybe 10 people with masks in total.
But also, there's no testing to get in because here in the Netherlands, the law changed as they were planning KubeCon so that it's no longer legal to require to show proof of vaccination or to test or anything like that.
Oh, so then the CNCF wasn't able to mandate, I guess,
Yes.
either of those.
Exactly.
Interesting. Wow.
So I think the people who were scared probably at that point avoided the conference completely.
but they had a place where you can get free tests. So that I found still good. So you could, when you wanted to test yourself every day to be sure that you didn't catch anything.
Not a bad idea. Now, I was going down the pandemic route, not that we're a political show because we're nowhere near that. But still, do you want hundreds and hundreds of people in a ball pit forgetting there's ever been a pandemic? That's just a nasty place to be, man, unless it's getting cleaned every hour. I'm trying to make a joke here and nobody's getting it. That's okay.
Yeah. The ball pit was, it only had one or two people in it at a time. And then if you're just talking about germs, that's going to be true of every ball pit ever.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Regardless of whether there's a pandemic.
That's what I was going for. Yes, that's what I was going for. Anything else that we need to know about KubeCon Amsterdam 2023?
I have some points what I said. Okay, there are some trends I can still see and where things heading on. So I saw that the multi-tenancy question on Kubernetes is still something where people come up with very interesting solutions. That's something I saw plenty of sessions where multi-tenancy was a thing and they tried to solve it with different approaches. I saw one approach, for example, from New York Times, where they use a single cluster going with namespace and strong network policies. But I also saw several very cool usage of vCluster. I went jokingly to the Loft people. I said, hey, you will have the same faith like other people who have a strong OSS. You will not get the money of your product like others do because they use, for example, vCluster in such a creative way. For example, CodeFresh, that's amazing. So multi-tenancy in Kubernetes is something I saw.
What's CodeFresh doing with vCluster?
I mean, I'm not following closely CodeFresh, but essentially they're giving each customer a vCluster instead of, figuring out, hey, are you in namespace? Or we cannot afford to give you a full cluster, right? Because that would kill the business and things like that.
And they created a cross-plane provider too for the whole Helm approach. So they can spin up on their host cluster a virtual cluster using cross-plane and then provisioning Argo on top of it. So the customer gets then a full-blown CodeFresh cluster. So that was a really impressive usage of multi-tenancy and vCluster to have this strict separation. But I saw also an approach to use kata containers to say, okay, let us use kata containers to have this strict sandbox and then also try to do the multi-tenancy on this, shifting the people on their dedicated kata container node. That was also very interesting.
But when you think about it, vCluster, I predict, is going to be, by this time next year, it's going to be one of the biggest, most used projects, simply because we don't have that problem solved for SaaS vendors, right? If you're a SaaS company, what do? Right? Especially if you're a SaaS company, it has a free tier. Are you going to give an EKS cluster to every free tier? You're not, right? I'm really placing a big bets on vCluster.
Yeah. I saw that Rich, I mean, you can see this also on the Loft evolution of their company. I saw Rich's tweet this morning. They started with 10 people and now they are 25 and keep on growing. And their booth, for example, was also one of the packed ones because people are like, they have also other products, yes, but vCluster is the thing everybody is really interested, as Victor also said, as a possible solution to create this kind of tenancy structures, while, for example, you can use a controller on your host, but you don't need to install a controller on every vCluster. You can say, hey, vCluster 1, take the controller from the host one, and then you could provision, for example, whatever, while creating your CRDs or your ingress and so on. So very clever thing.
Anything else that we need to talk about, or do we want to just go ahead and wrap up so everybody can either fall asleep, fall on their face, or do some other falling type thing?
I had just one thing on my notes, but I'm also happy to close up if you want.
No, go ahead. What do you got?
I also saw that now, the first time, a little bit more than before, was the whole Spire and Spiffy thing. So the workload identity using Spire and Spiffy. I saw several talks on this. I could not attend it, but I found it interesting that people also start more giving talks about the zero trust, about the zero trust approach and using, for example, here also Spire and Spiffy. So I found very interesting to see that people starting working with it, because before I knew they exist, but rarely you find any talks or papers or tutorials around this. So good to see. And I'm looking forward what goes on with this in the future.
I have a question, actually. A prediction. How many companies will have the word AI in Chicago?
It will be huge. That's what we joked also. We said, yeah, in Chicago, everybody will come up with something AI, something AI.
That's new DevOps, right? Or new Agile and all the other CI/CD.
Unless somebody wants to make any other predictions for Chicago, we think AI will be a thing for Chicago. Will AI be the thing for Chicago?
Oh yeah, that's unavoidable. I cannot imagine a world in which companies do not put an AI sticker behind whatever they're doing.
And all the CFPs will be written by AI too.
Yeah, exactly. You will be doing everything through AI.
Everyone will be a speaker because the barrier of entry of a CFP is no longer there.
We need to create our own training model that accepts that writes the CFPs. I saw a meme for this the other day. It's like person writing an email, ran it through some sort of, we'll call it ChatGPT, creates this 15-paragraph email, and the person receiving it took that 15-paragraph email and told ChatGPT to summarize it. Right? So it's like, are we just going to be creating so much more crap content that it's just not going to matter? And it's actually going to make things worse.
Hey, if we can replace ourselves with something AI, for our talks, that would mean that I can be 100% on the hallway track, even during my session.
That's getting closer and closer each day. Okay, Engin, Whitney, Victor, thanks for being here. I guess we might do this again for Chicago, maybe?
We need to make a requirement, kind of. You can join this show in Chicago only if you attended at least 10 sessions.
Oh my
I
goodness.
guess I won't be there.
Neither would
This is
Victor.
my-
That's the problem.
I heard that Chicago should be very cold there. So if I'm not freezing to death, then I will join the talk. But everybody was like, dude, you know how cold Chicago is in November? I'm like, no.
It will probably be about 50 Fahrenheit and whatever that is in Celsius. Yeah, it'll be like 10. Just for your, at best, it'll be 10.
So, Victor, we have a problem. 10, what they mean, feels for us probably -1 or something around this with the wind. So,
Means that we are not doing sightseeing in Chicago, only venue, Uber, after party, hotel.
Be sure to book a hotel that's a good hotel bar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
or we have to put the clothes like the Battle of Hoth in Star Wars, being like this.
Engin and Whitney, thanks for being with us today. Victor, I guess you're getting ready to get on a plane because we are recording this on the Saturday, right after this is Saturday, April 22nd. So you're getting this, listeners, pretty quick.
Yeah, need to go home, rest for a few days, and then on a plane again.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And we'll probably see some of you, if not all of you, again at KubeCon US in Chicago. We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.